Money is the thing that makes the football world go round. It's a multi-billion-pound global business that has football clubs and players, brands in their own right.
But with professional leagues in 135 countries worldwide, some of the players being paid are a far cry from the likes of Messi, Ronaldo, Mbappe. So the question today is, are footballers paid too much?
Hi, I'm Steven Caulker.
And I'm Rob Wotton, and this is Kicking Off. And let's kick off with some of those big figures then. If we look at the Premier League, Stephen, let's get straight into it. Erling Haaland, £525,000 a week. Mo Salah, £400,000 a week. In fact, there's 7 players in the Premier League on over £300,000 a week. This is huge money. Surely they are being paid too much.
The numbers are insane. I want to put that out there right from the beginning. The numbers are ridiculous. My only argument is that it's supply and demand. The players are paid that amount of money because they are the best. The amount of money that's pumped into football, why shouldn't the players be earning it? The agents are taking 409.1 million they took during the 24-25 season. So if there's this kind of money in football, why should the players on the pitch not be earning it?
Okay, they are the top. They are the very elite. I get that. But in the Premier League, the average weekly wage per player, if we average them all out, if we go from your Erling Haalands to your Bournemouths, your Brentfords, your Burnleys, it is something around the region of £60,000 a week. So, okay, we're not talking about the elite of the elite of the elite here. We're talking about Premier League squad players.
We're still talking about a percentage of players that is so small. To make it to the promised land, we used to call it as players back in the day. Let's just take the UK as an example. If you're a youth player in the UK, you've got a 0.013% chance of making it to the Premier League. So if you make it to the promised land where the money is insane and you're able to stay there for a period of time, then you will naturally become a multi-millionaire. However, that's just one crazy perception of footballers, because we are talking about, in my opinion, regardless of whether you're Erling Haaland or a player for Burnley, Bournemouth and Brentford you just mentioned, you're still an elite player to have got to that level. What about, let's take a look at the other divisions in England, the Championship, League One, League Two. There's a huge drop-off in those areas, no?
There certainly is. If we look at the average wage, as I said, in the Premier League at £60,000 a week, if we move down to the Championship, and even with those parachute payments that are available, so the ones who've just been relegated are most probably still pretty much on Premier League wages. The average wage in the Championship goes down to £10,000 per week. That is still, by the way, a Championship player will earn more in 3.5 weeks than the average wage across the UK in a year.
So I actually want to touch on these numbers, right? So I played in the Championship with Bristol City at 18 years of age. I was earning £2,500 a week, right? So I was right at the bottom end of your average there. And I'm sure there were a lot of other players in that same bracket as me. Where I think the average is so high is because then you go to, for example, when I was relegated with QPR and I was earning 30,000, 35,000, I believe, a week at that stage in the Championship. As a relegated player playing in the Championship, I should have, on paper, what I was earning, been the best player there, period. Because, same as what it's like for those teams that go down each year. Let's look at the obvious. Wolves are going to go down. Burnley look like they're going to go down this year. Those players will still be on big money next year, despite a slight wage cut. However, that isn't always the reality. It's a really tough division, which makes it so exciting, which again means that so many people watch it, which again brings some money back in. But I do agree with the argument. If you're on £35,000 a week as a Championship player, that's insane amount of money. And I don't think there's any denying that. At that point, Could I justify that? I didn't justify it with my performances. I was actually a better player on the £2,500 a week. The money didn't make me a better player. I was fortunate at the time, because luck plays a big part, that I was able to have got a decent contract.
That's an interesting debate. Does money automatically equal a better improvement? Maybe for another day, because today we're talking about, are they paid too much? But drop down from the Championship, and as you'd expect, wages drop down even further. 5,000 for League One, 2,000 for League Two. If you go into the National League, the average there is £1,000 a week. Okay, £1,000 a week, you seem like a pauper compared to Haaland, but actually, if you're paid £1,000 a week, you're on 52 grand a year, which is still more than 1.5 times more than the average person in the UK. So you're being paid 1.5 times more than that, than a person who gets up every morning, works from 9 till 5, struggles to pay their rent or their mortgage, struggles to put food on the table, and all you do is turn up at training with your mates, have a bit of a laugh, kick a ball around, and go home again.
I think we do a little bit more than that, Rob.
No,
Just a little.
I've seen you training, Stephen. That is all you did.
Right, I think you're doing myself and a few of the non-league players over there a bit of an injustice, right? So let me talk you through what an actual day as a footballer looks like. If you're a full-time footballer, the days of hey red nap, coming in at 10 and leaving at 12 are long gone. It's typically an 8:30 start to a maybe 2 p.m. start. So you're getting half a day work in there, let's say. But for me, it's the sacrifices you make outside of that. So a lot of the time, people are living away from home. They're traveling non-stop. I mean, if you're going back to the National League, if you're at Woking and then you're playing Gateshead, they're long days traveling, long time on the road. And also just the pressure that comes with having to perform each week. And if you don't perform, that £1,000 a week that you're talking about on average in the National League, that disappears. And you drop down to National League South, all of a sudden you're on half that money and you're having to work alongside it. So I think the mental pressures are what slightly justifies players earning that decent money, and also having to be in constant physical conditions. So when you guys want to turn up on Boxing Day to watch your National League football, the players the day before have had half a Christmas dinner, no alcohol, and gone to bed at 9, 10 p.m. in preparation. So I just want to give another perspective to actually the life of a footballer away from the pitch.
I was just checking that guitar behind me hadn't shrunk into the world's smallest violin as you were talking there. But no, in all seriousness, I love the National League, and I love the players in there. They are the kind of the true beating heart. Maybe that's a debate for another day as well. Maybe we'll get onto that. But what needs to be mentioned in that defence that you put down there was the fact that these careers are very small. Footballers, when they finish playing football, aren't as equipped maybe to enter the working world because they've dedicated their lives to football. So they're on the back foot already. So I hear what you're saying. And in fact, I think to use a phrase in the Tour de France, it's chapeau, hats off to those who are playing in those lower leagues. Actually, it's those higher end ones that really are the ones that people point the finger at.
Yeah, I mean, average footballer's career is 8 to 11 years. So when you actually break it down at the end of it, people, I mean, I started at 17. A lot of players start 16, 17, 18, whatever age it might be. But before they're 30, they're retired. And what's next for a lot of these players? Because it's not just a sacrifice they make on a daily basis. It's also the sacrifice that players make prior to becoming a professional. All those evenings, cold, wet weekends where players are sacrificing their childhood to a certain degree to become a full-time professional football player. That's what it looks like. So yes, there's still an argument. What about the players who don't make it? We can argue from both sides. I'm not here to sit here and defend Erling Haaland's 525 grand a week. All I would say is he's very, very, very good at what he does. And that money, a lot of that money is brought in through sponsorship. Yeah, that's where a lot of that money comes into the picture.
Yeah, I think maybe we're going slightly off tangent here, But I think what frustrates Premier League football fans is the cost of admission. Most of the revenue comes in from TV, but clubs are charging them an awful lot. So if you are a fan of a football club who wants to go to that football club, more and more, if we look at the Bundesliga and the model there, that actually fans paying for season tickets aren't paying nearly as much as in the Premier League. And I think that the idea is I'm giving all my wages over to you, pampered, highly paid footballers. And if you can't run around properly for 90 minutes on a Saturday and earn that money, I think that's where this kind of disgruntled fan view of football has come from.
And it's completely justified. There's absolutely no defence that I could offer. And I can understand why fans turn up and want to see players give 100%. That's a given. Players can play badly. That's just a fact of life. Nobody turns up to work every day and performs to the best of their ability. Not through lack of effort. It's just we're humans, right? And some days we perform there, other days we perform there. It's just part of life. Mistakes are what makes the game so beautiful, so exciting, because mistakes without goals are scored. It's just the lack of effort that, of course, gruntles people, and in regards to that, I have no defence of any player that isn't out there giving 100% on the weekend. What I want to touch on, though, Rob, right, is we've spoken a lot about the English football pyramid. We haven't spoken about abroad. Now, I've played abroad, I've played in quite a few countries. It isn't quite the same picture. Certainly not in all of those countries.
Yeah, I mean, people think of Spain. I think the same trap here is put of people when they talk about players being overpaid are picking on the Erling Haalands, the Mo Salahs, those players, and expecting everyone else to be on those wages. If you look at Spain as an example, I think if people think, oh yeah, La Liga, they're thinking of the Bellinghams or the players at Barcelona or others at Real Madrid and thinking all players over there get that sort of wages. That's simply not the case, is it?
No, it's certainly not the case. La Liga, outside of let's say the top three, which you have Atletico, Real Madrid and Barca, the wages drop down drastically. And that's just simply because in Spain, the TV money isn't split evenly across all the teams. It's given to the biggest teams that people want to watch. So as a player, deciding to go out and play in Spain, if you're offered the best club in Spain, you're signing, you're running there, you're swimming there to sign the deal. If actually looking at one of the smaller clubs in Spain, of course, then you consider, is it worth moving abroad? And then as you drop down the leagues in Spain, drop down the divisions, it then becomes actually a case of surviving. I mean, I went in the 5th division in Spain over there as player coach, and that was a case of surviving. I was below the average wage and I was trying to make a living. I was trying to start out as a coach and build something for me there. I've of course come from a fortunate position where I previously played in the Premier League, which left me in a position where I was able to survive. But for a lot of people just trying to carve out a career, it's extremely, extremely difficult to just survive financially. And of course, the perception is for a lot of these players, especially if they're coming from Africa, coming from Asia, and they're coming into Spain to play at that level, their families are of the understanding or the belief that they're earning good money now because you're now a football player, you're earning good money, but that's just not the reality. As I said, you're talking about a very, very basic wage, just enough to survive.
And now you're in Turkey, and you said you played in other countries. So how do all of these compare?
Turkey's slightly different. I mean, Turkey hosts the likes of Osimhen, the likes of Icardi, Leroy Sané, and that's just a Galatasaray alone. So in Turkey, there's a lot of money, okay, but it's mostly spent on the superstars. And of course, in Turkey, you then have the slight issue with late payments. You're not 100% sure if you're going to receive your salary. It's a very different experience to playing in England, where you're paid per month on the dot, no matter how you've performed. In Turkey, it's a case of the president will sit you down as a team and say, do you honestly deserve your salary this month? Do you believe you deserve it? You've lost all 4 games that we've played. Do you believe we deserve it? And I'm sure there'll be a lot of fans going, I want those presidents at the clubs in England, because they argue the point of the fans. And, as frustrated as I can be at times, because I think, well, hold on, I'm here, I've signed a work contract, I'm here to work, I'm living away from home, etc. There is a part of me that definitely can understand that. If we're not performing, then why should the president give you the money? But then, of course, we've signed a contract, etc. So FIFA get involved and it becomes a little bit more complicated. Thankfully, I'm at a club now that doesn't have that issue. But I want to touch a little bit on going to play in Iceland. I went to Iceland, and again, the perception there is, okay, you're a professional football player. But actually, most of those players there, despite playing in the Europa League some seasons, despite playing in the Conference League, a lot of the players there work alongside playing. So it's a part-time job where they then have to go and compete against a Celtic or a Hoffenheim of Germany and have to perform, when actually they would have had work earlier on that day. Very different perception to the Premier League lifestyle.
So that is Iceland, that is Spain, that is Turkey. What about Scotland?
So I spent a little bit of time at Dundee. Absolutely loved my time there. And the biggest part I loved actually was I was at a club where the wages weren't so big, the egos weren't so big, and it was just a change room of working class men, in all honesty. And I know that's varies quite a lot in Scotland, because you have got your big clubs in Rangers and Celtic. You've got, Hearts and Hibs just outside, and Aberdeen arguably just outside of that bracket. It's a very skewed perception, and I believe that a lot of that is stemmed through social media. So there's this perception that every player is living the absolute dream, and it may still be your dream regardless of what you're earning, because you're playing football for a living, fantastic. But the financial perception is very much skewed, and I don't believe that we're all Jeff Bezos or Erling Haaland of the world.
Yeah. So there we go. Social media at the root of all that is wrong. That seems, a familiar theme. All right. Okay. So I'm trying to circle around. Do you think that if football can afford it, that these higher wages are good for the game? In other words, what I'm trying to say is, if football can afford it, then who cares what footballers are paid if it brings the talent into the Premier League that we love to watch?
If the Premier League clubs can afford to pay Haaland, Salah, and the other players who are earning 300,000 plus a week, then I believe they should. Where I guess the argument comes in is, could they cut away a little bit of those wages and reduce the price of merchandise, reduce the price of the TV channel, or reduce the price of tickets to be there with your kids watching the game? Yes, I think there's definitely room for that. But it is a case of supply and demand. A lot of players, I want to add this bit in, do a lot for charity. A lot of players, myself included, I've built schools. I've seen Sadio Mane build schools, build hospitals. There's a lot of money that actually footballers put back into society. I wanted to do this show today because I want to help bridge the gap between players and the public, because I think the gap between the fans and the superstars is so big today that it's changing the game. And I think having that gap a little bit closer would just be more enjoyable for all.
Yeah, I guess that there is great irony in fans who complain that the likes of Haaland and Salah are paid too much, and then moan about the Saudi League nabbing all the good players because they're paying them too much. So you can't have it both ways, can you? Footballers, are they mercenaries, or are they just people trying to look after themselves? And why not look after themselves?
You make a good point, Rob Wotton. Maybe I've won you over just a little bit, and I hope that you remember this when you're at Stamford Bridge next week, cursing away because you've got 10 men and finish.
I think it's just easier just to name 10 men on the starting sheet before we even. So, but I've just got a little seed of an idea from you and your Turkish chairman, but with a twist. I think chairman in the Premier League should turn around and go, okay, the price of your ticket is £30. If your club wins, that goes up to 50. If we lose, you only pay a tenner. That's the better way to do it. And then skint fans will be going, oh, concede a goal, let's lose. So there you go. Maybe that's a revolutionary way to charge fans to get into games.
I like the idea, Rob. I'm not sure it's going to catch on, but I like it. Let's put it out there for the world to decide.
Yeah. Okay, if I'm not going to get my new ticketing policy through, then how about this? How about players across the league are paid a basic wage? The rest is all incentivized. So if you are Erling Haaland, you get 20 grand a week. If you make an appearance, you get another 250,000. If you go and score a goal, you get another 250,000. Do it that way round. Therefore, fans are cheering you on. You are reaping the rewards of your beneficial play. Everyone's happy.
Firstly, I mean, it would take a very brave man to offer Erling Haaland 250,000 a goal, considering how many goals he scores. Secondly, his teammates wouldn't be impressed, as he would never pass. Nobody would pass. Put himself in a shooting position. Everyone's gonna shoot to get the goal, right? So there are incentives already placed in football, and I do agree. I mean, the base wage would have to be slightly higher, and the bonus would have to be slightly less, because I think those insane numbers of incentives that you just mentioned there would create a very different game of football, in my opinion. But there is a good argument, and I've actually been placed on contracts similar myself when I was out of football for a long time. Coming back into the game, clubs have gone, right, we don't know how you're going to be physically, we don't know how you're going to be mentally. I publicly spoke about my struggles there. So clubs have gone, right, here's a base wage, and if you play, that wage will double, or if you win X amount of games, there'll be an incentive there as well. So, yeah, that idea is out there. It's probably not as widely known as it could be or as it should be, but it's just a case of supply and demand. If I'm at the top of my game and you're offering me that to come to Chelsea, or Tottenham are offering me a guaranteed wage for the security of my family, I think I would, and most people would choose the security.
Well, that's about it for kicking off this week. And I think I'll give Steven a point this week. He gets the win bonus, because I think he has managed to convince me that actually footballers aren't paid too much, and the disparity between those at the lower ends of the game and the higher echelons is huge. And even those at the top end perhaps deserve those exorbitant wages. So a win there for Steven this week. My thanks to you for watching or listening this episode of Kicking Off.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, please hit the like, subscribe, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on whether footballers earn too much money.